one of the places I see identification hiding, often in spiritual or healing circles, is in depth. So it's for sensitive souls and mind bodies who are making peace with their sensitivity and embracing the gifts of sensitivity and the strengths and capacity, is that we can start to crave and want to orient towards depth, which isn't necessarily unconscious or conscious. There can just be almost like an open door to access, to go there, to shift underneath the small talk of daily life, the expectations, the formalities and roles, and to really drop and be, which is awakening when there's no agenda, that is authenticity, that is the thisness of this moment, the spacious, unfolding, dynamic aliveness. And I see this polarization between depth and shallowness that occurs, that comes with its own kind of suffering. So an example of this is in our healing journeys, if there's a lot of trauma, and to survive the trauma from the past, we had to create a tight, predictable conditioning that wouldn't get overwhelmed or flooded by the raw, tender, rageful, vulnerable, sorrowful, tender parts that haven't fully released or been supported enough to let go. So those tight, functional identities hold everything in place, and then at a certain point, when there's a readiness, whether through intentional modalities of healing or through life or through loss, and something cracks through that protective shell, then all the old stuff can start flooding, which is natural. And what feels most stable, what I see as most stable, what I mean by stable is capable of trusting. The system is capable of kind of finding this unconditional grounding, even amidst turbulence. I see that stability arising one, when there's a readiness, and two, you might know this like metaphor of like when it's supported, as if this hand is grasping something aching and tender, if we're prying it apart, we can access that, but it's going to create more tension and pain and stress and suffering than if we support it and there's a trust for it to open. And often that just naturally happens with time and space, and then this relatively safe container, whatever it might be, whether it's relationship or there's trust built or healing space, therapy, retreat, life altering experience, or just perspective. That can happen in kind of stabilized way. And I haven't forgotten this polarization between depth and shallowness, but I'm first kind of walking the line of this, what I see to be the reality of healing in a certain way that doesn't need to be defined by depth or shallowness. When we start to rush the process or have an agenda that healing needs to happen in some sort of way at some sort of time with some sort of neat package of the peaceful one, of the pain-free one, of the warm, open-hearted, loving, non-reactive one, then we start to pry, start to rush. There's this frenetic, fast digging. I would call it digging. This kind of prying. Another way to see that is kind of mining the mind body for freedom. Not saying that at the right time and the right space, certain medicines and tools and supports will naturally feel called for and will naturally feel supportive, and they might be challenging, they might push you out of your edge. It's not going to feel like the same kind of digging, though. It's going to feel like a calling, maybe. It's going to feel like a realization that I need support and help, and this is an aligned, resonant space for it. That's going to feel very different than the digging. The digging that says the depth down here is true and the shallowness up here is false. I need to get away from this shallowness. It creates this dichotomy that says everyday life is shallow, that says that ordinariness is shallow, that says that relationships with non-awake people are shallow. I'm laughing because it's just an imaginary character out of some story of these awakened and non-awakened and deep and shallow people. Again, not saying to not go deep if depth is alive and called for. And I am saying that this surface, what's on the surface, what's most apparent, notice if you're labeling it as shallow. And notice what gets abandoned when that happens. It's often what I also see people label in a nihilistic way as pointless. Just this. What's the point? What's the point of being here now? What's the point of whatever that nihilism is pointing to? Seeking, working, being as I am when I'm in pain, judging, not judging others or myself, like what's the point? That is another polarization that's identified with maybe either depth or shallowness, that's saying that whatever level or layer this is it's not enough. It's close. The nihilism is close to letting go, to saying, well, what's the point? Well, yes, there is no agenda when we're really, really, really here. There is no hierarchy of deep or on the surface. There's the wisdom that will be presented, and it's not up to me to choose what wisdom is arising or not arising right now. And it's a misunderstanding to think that I should have any control or manipulation of it, that there is anyone to control or manipulate. So when we can invite in that nihilism that is natural, maybe is even existential or unavoidable, when we get closer and closer to truth, what's really there when we're not avoiding. And we can just not even try to manipulate that nihilism, get closer to it. And it might not be accessible, but when it is, there is this trust right here, right now. I don't think you would be listening up until this point if it wasn't on some level, in some flavor of what's being perceived right now, what's being contacted right now, some subtle or very overt trust that arises. There's no one doing the trust. The trust is what's holding and weaving through justice that doesn't need a point, doesn't need an accomplishment, doesn't need an achievement, doesn't need to have something unearthed and exploded or transformed or transcended, that is inherently welcoming and alive and vital and vibrant. And it's right here. It's nowhere else. If you're anywhere else, you're going to feel those qualities. Those subtle reflections and interpretations that make this something else. If you're right here, that's what unravels you. And you can be busy, you don't have to hold on to this, you can move and you can talk and you can be exactly as you are, because you already are. There's no destroying this, there's no undoing this, there's no holding or creating or making it happen. This right here. This is it.